in moments of nature, when I'm out with friends, like we were watching the shooting stars in Big Bear, and we just drove there, went at like 3 a.m. and just watched the shooting stars. And there's those moments where you realize how small you are in the course of like the grand scheme of the universe. And you're like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
why pursue? Why, why try so hard on any of this? But in those moments too, it's just like an appreciation, then a reminder of nature and the universe. And hey, if you are this like tiny little particle here, it is kind of interesting. Maybe you do just try to see more of the world, and it's a reminder of there's so many things bigger out there. And so yeah, it actually pulls me in
Huh.
both ways. Just like, why try? Why try? Like, what's the point? Like, we're my problems and my goals, what does it even matter in the greater
Yeah.
scheme of the universe? But then at the same time, it's just like, wow, the universe is so big. I want to know more about it. I want to see what's possible.
Huh. It's so interesting because I mean, as you might imagine on a show like this, where it often gets philosophical and you're thinking big picture meaning of life, one of the themes, maybe the strongest theme, and this is not novel, this is throughout ancient wisdom, is the duality of life. Exactly that tension you just spoke of. And I think that's probably, if you had to sum up the game of life, it's trying to figure out how to balance and manage it in numerous different ways to balance that duality. So I'm going to press on that a little bit because I do think it's so fascinating and interesting. Like, how do you literally reconcile that though, right? So you just touched on it a little bit, right? Sometimes you're pursuing the poker thing and you're all in and you're consumed by it, and that's what you're thinking about for 2 weeks straight, and that's it. Then you're staring at shooting stars and you're like, that shit doesn't matter at all. Like, I'm just here. How do you literally reconcile that so that when you wake up tomorrow, you know what you should be doing? I mean, the simple thing is to say, you can hold both of those thoughts and understand they both could be true, but you actually believe one of them more so. I'm not saying that's, but is that true? Like, can you see the value of both, but you actually think one is more important? Or are you actually managing that duality and you hold both equally?
I manage it. I actually use it. And I recognize when you're asking this question, it reminds me of when the times I kind of lean in more to one approach than the other. So I had some major setbacks last year, financial setbacks, investments that I thought were going to be home runs, uh, founders that I was supporting that I was so excited that they were going to get their big win. And I was there to help them on their journey, to help them achieve that. That's one of the things where one of the pursuing excellence for me too is investing or supporting another entrepreneur or person in achieving their greatest level of success. And I thought we were going to get there. And there was a couple where it just didn't work out. It basically went to zero. And I was really crushed. And
Mm.
I was crushed for my friend, the founder I built relations with, and for myself, where I was like, oh, what did I do wrong? I could have done more for them, etc. And it's actually those moments where I'm like, it doesn't matter, Nancy. It's okay. Like, this is so small. Think about how long your life is, how long their life is. They're going to keep on starting new companies. And because they're so fantastic of a person, if this one doesn't work out, they'll take the learnings, they'll do the next one. And so I lean into hey, the universe is so grand. Don't get caught up with your own things that you think is so important. It's not. It's just part of the experience of life. And this is just what it is. It doesn't mean that you went and 10x your money in a year. Who cares?
Mm.
That
But
doesn't
what if,
really.
like in that example, right? I hear it, and again, the words are the right words, but I want to pressure test them a little bit. Like, there's a potential where implicit in that explanation you're giving is like that who cares part of it. It's a timing. There's a timing aspect to it. Like, who cares in this moment? In the grand scheme of things, they'll start another business. They'll eventually get to that success, right? They'll get to that excellence. Does that mean that it's actually all rooted in the idea that you still do have to succeed? You have to get to that excellence. It might not be today, it might be later, versus the pure view of like, why does it matter is, and let me ask you this way, maybe. If you never succeeded at anything again, if none of your investments ever hit again, if nothing ever, businesses took off, TV shows, anything like that, are you genuinely okay with that? Or is it like, I use that when I need to put it into perspective, but ultimately the goal is always still to get to the right successful outcome, if you know what I mean?
I think you are absolutely right in pointing that out. I think at the end of the day, I need to have pursued excellence and to have further tried to get success and that excellence. And so I think it's the part where I'm like, oh, it doesn't really matter. That is me comforting myself.
Mm.
And so it's more of these moments and the reminders to say, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. This is just, you're at mile 1 of 26.2.
Mhm.
And so there's still so much. It's
So much
not
to do.
about how you start, it's how you end the race too. And it's everything along the way builds up also to whether or not you can complete it in the way that you want. And so I definitely think probably the core is the pursuing the excellence. If I didn't get to achieve anything else, I think I would be dissatisfied with myself and
Mm.
feel disappointed in myself. And again, I want to emphasize the excellence piece isn't
Yeah.
necessarily just around the business or stuff like that. It's actually sometimes for me, I have goals where I want to run the 400 meters in 60 seconds or less. I want to be able to read a certain number of books. Last year, I read 53 books and finished it, and I loved it. And I want to do it again. It's things that are just even fulfillment where maybe other people doesn't, they might not see
Mhm.
that like,
Mhm.
oh, that's like a excellence, but it's for me, I want to read, I want to learn more about people's perspectives. And that even to itself is pushing myself
Yeah.
to like, it takes effort. Like if I just do things and it doesn't take effort, maybe that's part of it too. Then it doesn't become very meaningful for me if I
Has to be
stop
earned.
trying.
It has to be earned in some way, kinda. Well, let's
Yeah.
let's press on that, and I know we touched on it before, but to me, this is the crux of the conversation and life in many ways, like, why? If you really go deep and say, "Why?" What is it that makes you believe or makes you know that if you're not, reading those books, like, why did that feel so good? Is it, as you touched on before a little bit, that the universe is so massive and immense and in some ways infinite that you feel being alive is trying to experience as much of that as you can? If that's reading books, if that's traveling, if that's whatever it is it rooted in that, like, I just feel like as humans, we have this almost obligation to experience and just truly be alive? Is that kind of what it's rooted in, or is it something else?
I think it is that it's the um philosophy where let's pretend right now we are just a brain in a vat. Like I remember I took this philosophy class where it's the, free will, not free will.
Mhm.
Let's say you're just a brain in a vat. This is the matrix, this is not real. It's just your this brain connected to a bunch of signals that that's creating this experience. And let's say that is the case. And I'm like, would I do things differently than I am now? And that's sometimes the test. And I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't do things different. I think I would very much do things the same, which is just pursuing as much of like, let's just see what is possible, what my like little brain in a vat can do. And you asked why. Well, why do this? The thing that I first thought of when you said that was, why not? If you have this, instead of saying the why, which I know is a great, I've read like some books that are like start with why,
Mhm,
things like
mhm.
that. For me, a lot of times growing up was the why not. I don't know if I even had the ability or I would say it's almost the fortune to be able to ask why. Oh, why is this happening? We didn't have that. We just were struggling. We were just trying
Mhm.
to survive and make it through the next day. That when I was growing up, the fact that we got to, do something, even if it was growing up and having a vacation where we stayed at a motel and we drove there to whatever it was, like Las Vegas or something. It was awesome. It was cool. It was just, we were so lucky to even just be able to do that, that it was never like, oh, why do I get to have
Mhm.
this? And so when really interesting things, every time it just felt to me, this was the cherry on top.